Welcome everyone who's joining us from Australia, and welcome to Lisa Andrews from Singularity University, who's going to be my co-host, and to Mihaela Iliru, who I didn't expect to be here, but she's one of the most awesome women in blockchain that I know, so I'm excited that she's here. See you later, Anu. If you need to go, we're off now.
Thank you.
Jeremy Foreman's just joined us. Jeremy, if you want to join the panel, press the request, and if we can find a way to join you, we will. Otherwise, just keep on typing in your comments and questions. So let's just get started with, first of all, yeah.
Real quick. We had to tell every other male speaker that this was just today. We were going to do Amplifying Her Voice. They can comment and share, but we put it in all of the notes just before I leave.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Jeremy.
Sorry, Jeremy. We have a whole bunch of people, otherwise we'll jump on. Sorry about that. I know. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, anyway, maybe if you've got any messages, you can just pass them to us. Okay, so we're celebrating International Women's Day, and for me, what's exciting about this is just the fact that Anu has managed to create this global event where we're talking to women literally all around the world over the course of about 12 hours. So as she said, you know, so far this morning, I've been on a panel with Africa, a panel with Latin America and the Caribbean. We're doing Australia. And then I know for a fact, because I'm going to be there, Indonesia, China, Mongolia, and the Philippines are also coming on. So it's just powerful to have the sharing of women's voices from all around the world talking about issues that are important to them. So let me just first start by asking Lisa first and then Mihaela to introduce themselves and tell them a little bit about themselves. And then we'll get on to this conversation, which I think is super important, which is about investing in women. Lisa.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So as you mentioned earlier, I'm the co-CEO of Singularity University in Australia and part of international faculty. I also run a finance business and am an angel. And so prior to COVID, I was traveling the world and all sorts of different various locations and having incredible conversations. I think for me, it was really learning about what the world's challenges are. And there's something really special about going to different locations and being able to really feel and understand different cultures and different challenges, and then also understand how we can apply technology to solve those challenges. So as a CFO by trade, I love to always, know where you're at, know where you want to be, and then gap analysis, massive action plan. And as I moved more into the blockchain space and almost this future of perfect knowledge, I've realized, how much opportunity that we currently have in this world to make a difference. And so I'm excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, thank you. And so am I. And welcome everyone who's joining. Mihaela, so great to see you here. I was just excited when your face popped up. What are you doing joining us, and welcome? And let's tell everyone a little bit about you and what you're doing.
Thank you so much. First of all, yes, indeed, I'm very excited to be on this panel with both of you. It's amazing. Sorry, I cannot display an Australian accent. It's one of my favorite ones. So what I'm doing these days, speaking of what Lisa was mentioning about Singularity University, I am a chief alchemist at Singularity Net, and also a strategic impact catalyst at the developers of Cardano, which is IOG, Input Output Global, as well as I'm president of the Impact Institute for the Digital Economy. In short, anything decentralization, come to me. SingularityNet is artificial intelligence decentralized. And of course, Cardano is now the third blockchain on the scale. And we hope to become much better.
That's amazing, and welcome. And just for anyone who's listening in, Mihaela's got a brain that's bigger than the planet. So she really can touch on almost every topic in an incredibly intelligent and informed and insightful way. So thanks for joining us. Well, let's just kick off because, we thought that the topic that we could start off with was really this issue about how we can get more women being active in the economy, how we can get more women founders, how we can get capital to invest in women and women-owned businesses and businesses that have an enterprise that's going to be helpful to women. Just a few quick facts, and I'm sure you've seen them all because they're going all around on International Women's Day. Women currently control $20 trillion in consumer spending. So what women choose to do is incredibly powerful in the economy. Secondly, McKinsey did a study and they estimated that if women participated in the economy at the same rate as men, that alone would add $12 trillion to the global economy. And then the final statistic that I wanted to share, because I think it is really important thinking about impact, thinking about the planet and thinking about people, is that women spend 90 cents in every extra dollar on their families and on their communities and on projects that are going to be beneficial to other people. So there's every reason in the world to invest in women. And yet we're still not where we need to be. So I'd love, Lisa, if you just kick off with maybe what your thoughts are around how we can get more capital and how we can get more women to be founders and how we can support them to be able to initiate their own businesses. And also then we'll go on to that second issue about businesses that benefit women. So let's just start with, come on, let's get more investment into women. How do we do that?
It's a fantastic question and topic. And just as a little bit of background, we've been running global impact challenges around Australia and internationally with Singularity U, and then also been running the Extreme Tech Challenge in Australia and encouraging people through pitch competitions to be able to get funding and connecting Australian businesses to that international capital. And so being in this space and running these competitions for this is our third year, it's really challenging to be running a pitch event and then knowing that people are going to be looking for 50-50 male and female pitching. And we've been really lucky to be able to get sort of 20 or 30% sometimes, and just even in the application. So I think, the challenge is really real, and even especially in Australia. And so a lot of our strategies are going around and encouraging people to be able to start businesses, and even understanding that you can now, and the access to resources is more abundant than ever has been in human history. And so I loved even this is the 110th year of International Women's Day, and I think we're getting a lot of momentum in that space, but it's more of that empowering. And so one of the things that I love is talking about just being a superhero, and how do you actually expand people's mindset into, now is the time. And if you think about impacting 1 billion people is one of our slogans, and it was only 500 years ago that kings and queens could impact 1 billion people. 100 years ago, it was the industrialists, and today it's you and me. And so how do we actually embrace that inner superhero? And I've been dreaming about being Iron Man. And I'm like Iron Man in training. And if you imagine Tony Stark, he's got all these tools and this future of perfect knowledge. And so if you think about if you were a superhero and you learnt about a challenge in the world, so let's say it's, plastic in the ocean or world hunger, then how do you go to the Avengers headquarters and then get some extra super tools and, your team of people together to be able to then go and tackle that problem? And so I think sort of thinking about things in different ways, but then also just putting yourself out there and like having this conversation. And I love that you said, 12 hours today of encouraging and empowering women in this. The more and more momentum that we get, the more empowered people feel, and just encouraging people that now is the time that you really can make a difference. And then women, it's so great to be able, and the support that I've had in my career has been incredible because of incredible connections and women who are willing and able to give you a leg up in this space.
Absolutely. And I want to come back to that idea that you just put forward about impacting 1 billion people. But before I do, Mihaela, just let me ask you to introduce yourself and then to talk about how you think that we can get more investment into women and women-owned businesses.
Well, I think I already introduced myself.
Yeah, you did.
but of course, in the context of what I will speak, yes, I will introduce myself more and more. So I think it's very important. So it is, I look at this both sides. I mean, it's very important for women as well to get the courage and break through. For example, I was the first PhD student in my department, and it's not an easy thing to actually be surrounded by male colleagues who are hostile maybe sometimes and make some jokes and so on and so forth. It is very important, however, is that we also stand up for ourselves. So I've been given the opportunity to study there, and as such, yes, it's up to me, in fact, yes, if they are hostile or not, or So I think it is very important as well for us to take accountability once the opportunities come to us. Another aspect which I'd like to mention is how actually blockchain, and because this is a Qrypto Queens session, how it is actually enabling women. And I will give you, I think, 2 examples right now, just very briefly, in how it can be done. And this is a project which was started by a lady from Venezuela, Veronica is her name. It is called BitLumens. I'm sure maybe Jane, you heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard
The
of it.
idea is to give women, single mothers, opportunity to get credit and do something. So they live without electricity. They have to cook at, they have to chop wood, or in any case, use coal and or kerosene in order to even for their kids to study. So Veronica went and gave them solar panels and installed sensors that would give them, for their good behavior, credit. So that credit was given as crypto tokens, which then they could redeem with the banks. So that was their good behavior and credit, and then they could get money and start an economy, start to plant, to buy water pump or whatever they needed around the house. Another groundbreaking project is another one which I'm sure, Jane, you know of, is Sarafu Network, which gives women in Kenya. So they started with giving women in Kenya paper money, colored paper as credit. And then they started an economy exchanging that paper money, and then a non-profit and the Red Cross ultimately came and put dollars on the paper money, and they got started with the economy. So I think it's very important, this seed support. If you give to women, they will move mountains. That's one thing which I think it's underestimated. We definitely are very creative. We manage, as you mentioned, yes, households and everything else and lives. And if we are given opportunities, we will succeed.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting in the 2 conversations this morning with Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean, that issue about women preferring to get paid in crypto than get paid in their own currency came up several times. And similarly, how different blockchain projects are directly benefiting women in ways that in places like Australia, we don't really appreciate. And another one that you're probably aware of is the Hived Online work in Mali, digitising women's cooperatives and enabling them to get alternate credit scores because they can't borrow money because they have no credit history. So there are just a plethora of different projects using crypto and blockchain and various combinations that are benefiting people all around the world. Just coming back, though, to Lisa's point, because I think the big thing about the digital world and about mobile is that we can sit in a pretty small country of 30 million people and think about benefiting 1 billion people. Historically that wasn't possible, but now we can. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts, both about how we can do it, but I also think we're so privileged and lucky here in Australia that if we have the capacity to be benefiting people all around the world, we really should be doing that. So kind of sharing the good fortune and wealth that we have with others. So I'd love to hear from both of you on that.
Definitely. I think I love that, Mihaela, you've mentioned courage. And now more than ever, I think courage is going to help us step up and move forward. A couple of the things that I'm concerned about with Australia is that through COVID, we've actually not had it as tough as other people around the world. And so there's a lot less population, and we're on an island and our borders are closed in and out to most people. And Australians are very innovative by necessity. You'll see all sorts of really cool innovations come out of Australia, and it's typically because we look at a challenge and we fix it. And when you actually look at those global challenges, my concern is that we can fix challenges in Australia. How do you encourage people to do more internationally? And so we can innovate here. We are a small population, and we've got the ability to impact and create things that then get sold into the three largest populations like Asia, Africa, and India to be able to utilize some of those innovations. And so what will it actually take for us to have the courage to learn about the challenges that are there and then create things that will be able to be exported and make the difference in a lot of people's lives? And you mentioned finance. You know, in Australia, we've got so many incredibly smart people and the ability to be educated and then create these things. How do you actually focus our efficiency and our productivity towards some of these big problems? So I think there's something in that with the courage and then the education around what the world's problems are and, you know, what will actually motivate us to then solve some of those challenges, for me, is the highlight. And as we move towards a future of perfect knowledge and knowing more about what's happening in the world, I think that's where women have the ability to step up and nurture a lot of these problems. And so, you know, we spoke about, I mentioned just that there's still world hunger at the moment. And, you know, when you actually learn more about it, then how can we be smart about it? And, you know, with our budgets, we're feeding our own families. How do we think about other families and, you know, technology that might be able to assist that? And similarly with finance, you've mentioned so many times, Jane, about the ability to be able to create those credit scores or whatever it is to be able to empower people. And, you know, in Australia, we do have the ability to create the technology that will support those infrastructures.
Well, we do, but I also want to make a comment that you made me think about when you were talking about, you know, these billion people in other countries. I think I grew up in rural and remote Australia, so I grew up in Mount Isa. And in many ways, rural and remote Australia is the same as many developing countries. You know, it has that problem of distance. It has a lack of infrastructure. It has a lack of intellectual capital. And I think a lot of my subsequent work was kind of informed by growing up with that. But I think about rural Australia a lot now, and I think to myself, we can change that with technology. I don't know if either of you have seen, but recently the governor of Nevada has basically said, Nevada's opening up. If you're a tech company or a platform and you want to come and set up in Nevada and you essentially, you know, take enough space, then we're going to let you set up your own local government council. Like, you can basically govern your area and we welcome you. And we're going to welcome technologists and tech entrepreneurs and other people to come and help us build this. And then he followed it up with another post, which many of us in the blockchain space have been thinking about, which is, we're going to build a blockchain city in Nevada. And I say to every Australian who's listening and who's not listening, why aren't we doing this with Northern Australia? We have land, we have sunshine, we have water, we have deep water ports to Asia, we have minerals. Why aren't we reimagining Northern Australia and recreating it using the technologies that we have in agriculture, advanced manufacturing, marine permaculture, all of these things, and creating this new digital free economic zone in Northern Australia? So, Mihaela, sorry, I did take the platform a bit there, but I feel very passionate that we're not leveraging technology and the natural resources that we have to do something really awesome. So, Mihaela,
I love your vision.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think putting it out there and having a vision is one of the first steps. So imagine if Australia looked like this in the next 10 years, and then what would need to happen to be able to get there?
You know, and the only thing that we need is the imagination, because we have the money, we have the resources, we have everything that's needed, except, you know, enough people with a big enough vision to say, we're doing it. And so that's why I think Nevada's great. And you go, listen, if the governor of Nevada can do that, we can do it. And then say, listen, if when Estonia came out from under the communists and they had nothing and they said, we're doing it 15 years ago, we can do it now. Mihaela, sorry, off my soapbox. Your mic. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Yes, absolutely. And as they say, blockchain has no borders. And it turns out that also the problems have no borders. The problems which you underlined in Australia rural areas, they are present everywhere. And also in the US, believe it or not. I mean, Silicon Valley, San Francisco has so much poverty, really like third world. We are working with the mayor of San Francisco, yes, to give wallets to those disenfranchised. And of course, coming to the billion people, as you mentioned, Jane, I mean, that's why the ladies in Latin America prefer cryptos, because it's so easy for them to get wallets. And then they can get a universal basic income support, initial support, or anything, and much faster, much easier than getting them on, you know, in the traditional financial system. We call those wallets economic identities. Practically, they get to exist because they also get the money through their identity. And so it is really definitely as a universal problem. It can be solved with technology, and we can reach billions of people. It's a matter of imagination, but also of initiative. And of course, now we are pushed to have more initiative because the problems are deepening. And, you know, so from the mayors of cities, and as you mentioned, the Nevada, to country presidents, you know, I mean, more and more awakenings are happening, but not only from the old, let's call it system, as well as innovative companies are just going there in the field and helping people, as I was mentioning before. I mean, entrepreneurs. I mean, this is very important. The role of entrepreneurs. Now they are becoming important figures in the new world order, as I would call it. And female entrepreneurs.
You know, people are speaking now, and we don't speak enough about it, about the post-industrial age, which is what we're kind of entering now. And the world order is changing, and that's going to have significant impacts on the way that we think about everything, and the way we do things, and the way we earn our living. But we've got a question coming in, and Lisa and Mihaela, I'd be happy for you to give a perspective, and I will too, about the concept of own your own data and how that can create wealth for women and individuals, and just talking generally about the data economy and some of the advances there. So, Lisa, let me start with you, and Mihaela, then we'll ask you to speak about that.
I'm really interested, Mihaela, on your thoughts on, and I know, Jane, you have many thoughts as well. For me, I've been going through a phase of trust and transparency, and you know, we're building this new future, and in the past we've thought that it was a future problem and whatnot, but the amount of challenges that we're having now and the speed of change is happening even faster. And one of the things that I like to put things into perspective is that in the next 10 years we will see the equivalent of 100 years worth of innovation. And so being able to step up now and talk about what's important to you has never been more important, as we're the generations that are creating the frameworks that are going to be carried forward into the future. And I think, you know, a lot of things that have been in the news about Facebook and data, I got the little pop-up on my phone the other day that said, you know, do you want to allow the app to access all of your other websites and data on your telephone? And I've been very much on the full transparency mode. So I was just like, yep, okay, this is a social experiment. I'm going to walk my talk. And one of the things that I like to sort of put into perspective is that as we are moving into the future, we are going to be the most recorded generations of all time. And so in 100 years' time, in 1,000 years' time, we're quite likely to be the most researched generations of all time because we're the first to be truly recorded. And so part of that is understanding that we're filming this right now and, it's going to be accessible and for people to watch later. We have robots in our homes. We've got Siri, Alexa, we've got all sorts of data that's being captured about us. And then it's going to be available. And I think about some of the technologies we might have in the future. Let's say in a few years' time, we'll have technology that will analyze this video and be able to understand your micro expressions and how engaged you were and how authentic you are. And so this whole trust and transparency, I've got this accountability of just show up and be a good human. And so that's my kind of data first point there. And then the second one is then how do you monetize that and how can you use blockchain to empower people with their own data? And that's where this next 10 years is going to be critical because we've got the opportunity to create solutions, to be able to create the frameworks and the systems to be able to then utilize your own data. Who do you want to have your data and how do you want it used? And so whilst we've been in this engineering and this capture phase, now's the time to be able to say, well, this is what it is. And we speak a lot about the universal basic income. And so, if you are actually generating a lot of data and stuff, who's that important to? How's that going to be valuable to people? And how do we actually recognize that in a system that will work for everybody?
Yeah, really important points. And if we have time, we'll come back to the universal basic income discussion because there's a school of thought that we're also going to be in the post-jobs economy. So therefore, we have to think about how we make sure everyone has an income and how they get meaning in their lives and how they fill their daily lives. So we'll come back to that. But Mihaela, let's just stay on the topic of data and own your own data and monetizing data and this whole data economy. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that owning your data, owning your identity, which, so we are born and we grow up accepting that our identities are owned by governments. Then slowly, private companies infiltrated us with the belief that, it's okay for them to own our identities, our data, everything about ourselves. So I think it is, in the end, ultimately a matter of dignity to own our own data, especially the most personal data about ourselves, and to reveal it if we want, and only if needed. For example, if I need to prove that I am older than 18 to get a beer in a bar or some stuff like this. So it is important to change the paradigm and to enable people to have control of their identities and of their data. Monetizing should be for everyone who has it. So there are models now, and of course, blockchain enables that as well in many ways. I'm working with several, from social networks on blockchain to, for example, a very innovative company is called Profila, which is like the iTunes of advertising, in which you opt in if you want to. So it is a brand to consumer direct connection, but you opt in and you can tune in how much data they can see from you or what you give to them, and you get rewarded. I think it's very important. For me, this is the most important thing. Yes, and as I mentioned, a matter of dignity. I don't know. I think you maybe asked something else as well. I may have forgotten the second part of your question, Jane. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll just follow on a little bit because I think this is an area where people are working quite vigorously in healthcare, because with your generalized data, what goes on at the moment, and people are trying to work on models to solve it, is that every time we touch our mobile phone, we create a piece of data that someone collects and at some point will sell to someone else. So we're creating value that someone's making money out of, and it's not us. So the question is, can you find a way so that when we share our data with other people, we get some benefit if it's ever monetized. So that's the first thing. The second thing, in healthcare, I think it's two issues. One is that at the moment, health data is held by everyone except you. It's held by hospitals, it's held by insurers, it's held by the radiologists, it's held by the government, and it's not held by you. This has two issues. One is that now that we know health data has a value, you're not in a position to monetize what effectively should be your asset because you can't access it. But the second one is for the purposes of your own healthcare. At the moment, you know, doctors diagnosing and treating you is a very clunky business because they don't have access to your entire health record. You've probably moved to a few different cities, changed doctors, you know, went to a different pathologist, and your data is everywhere, all about the place except with you, so that when you go in with a problem, the healthcare and the diagnosis you receive is not highly curated to you and your individual medical history. And this is something that is possible, but we need to find a way so that people's data can be in one place for what people are calling precision medicine. And so the issue around getting you to access your own data and hold it, people are working on it. There's a project in Africa called Afria Record, which is actually trying to do that, which is basically creating a wallet and collaborating with a chain of hospitals healthcare provider to see if they're able to start basically loading people's data onto that wallet. I think it's much more doable in an emerging market than somewhere like Australia, and I think that this is one of Australia's perennial innovation problems, is we've got so many legacy systems and so many laws and regulations and reasons why we wouldn't be able to do that, that I think this is like a 10-year venture. But on the point around your health data and your data being an asset, people are coming up with really interesting models. And there's one that I quote quite a lot, which is a group of people are working on something, they call it Genius. But basically, it's the idea that it costs about $1,000 to have your genomic material read at the moment. And most people wouldn't bother paying $1,000 because they don't see the value. But what Genius are putting forward is this is an asset. And so let us co-invest with you. So we'll help get the $1,000 up so that you can actually, you know, get that genetic material read, but we're going to kind of own some of that asset in the future as we monetize it. So it's like an investment proposition. We'll put in 80%, you can hold 20%, but then when we make money, you get 20%, you know, distribution from your assets. So there's people working on these projects all around the world. So thank you, Christina, for your question about data. And I think, as Lisa said, the next decade, we're going to be figuring all of this out. People are already figuring it out now. And it's going to be a very, very interesting time as people start to think about claiming the rights to monetizing their data.
Gosh,
there are two companies which maybe she can check out. The genetic one is SHEQONOMI, and another one is doing electronic health records. It's like rejuve.io. And I think, you know, this is absolutely crucial, very important. We can have our health passport, yes, electronically, and prove that we are vaccinated, or if something happens to us when we travel, the doctors, as you mentioned, know what's happening to us. There are technologies which are enabling this, as well as are enabling what you are mentioning, Jane, processing on encrypted data, this zero-knowledge advertising. So we can solve these problems, that we can give our data and as well keep our privacy, because if the data is encrypted, everybody will be happy. So those who need the data to process it, the statistics and so on and so forth, will be happy, and we as well.
I love this topic, and I would love to see Australia leading the way in this area. And I'll share a little story in that I've had 2 kidney transplants, one when I was 17 and one when I was 34. And so when we talk about data, I've had a blood test every month for most of my life, over half of my life. And so the amount of data that's being collected is quite significant. And I do have full health now, and it's great, but I'm still collecting all of that data. I've got to get the accent right there. It's data in Australia, data. And as we're talking about it, so I think about the amount of data that they have on me. And you mentioned going to different doctors and having records all over the place. If I have to explain my history to another person, I've just got the shortcut version now of, I've had a transplant. It was 4 years ago and blah, blah, blah. I don't give them this is the second transplant and all that story. And imagine if you had that wallet that you're able to go, here's the parts of my history that you need to know to be able to do your job in the best way. You don't need to, when you go for a massage, be able to say, yes, I've had kidney problems. Like, really, do they need to know that? And one of the things that I've been looking to now is the more data that I have about my health, the more that I can extend the lifespan of my kidney. If you have a look at the health and the lifespan trends over time, we've been extending our lifespan, our healthy lifespan, for a long time. It was 40, it was 50, it was 60, now it's about 80. And we've never had access to technology like we do today, and that trend will continue. So, is it going to be the average lifespan? It's going to be 100, 120? Is it our brain that gives up or our body that gives up first? And so all of this data that's being collected is being used to be able to, hopefully with the intent of being able to help us live happier and healthier and longer lives. And the Health Nucleus program in San Diego about 5 years ago, and they've got a human longevity clinic there, and you walk in and it's a 4-hour experience where it's healthcare, not sick care, and they sequence your genome. They do a 2-hour MRI, a CT scan, ultrasounds. They test you for everything, pharmacology, DNA, and they give you a 300-page proactive healthcare report to be able to say, this is how we believe that you'd be able to extend your lifespan in a healthy way. They do pick up almost, I think it's about 30% of diseases that can be caught early and that can really be done something about. And if you go back every month, every year, then they'll use machine learning, and then they're able to identify things that you can do better, which is super cool. However, I got that information in an email. It's in a little portal, and I come back here and I've got to give it to my doctor and this and that and everything. Imagine if it was in one place. And then imagine if you could monetize it, because so many times I've ticked the box and said, yes.
I think you'd be a very valuable asset, actually.
Yeah. Like, use my data, and if it can help other people be able to live longer, then absolutely, I'd love to. And imagine if I could get paid for that. And I'm not sure we're there yet, but in Australia, in Newcastle here where I am, they've actually got the longest recorded history of data of kidney transplants, I think potentially in the world, definitely in Australia. And so how they actually use that and sell that internationally, and then be able to reward the people that their data has been captured that have gone into those studies.
Absolutely. But I think the good news is these projects are underway, and so it's going to be solved. But let me just go back to the people in the audience, because I think we're going to run out of time shortly, and see if anyone's got any questions. And while it's been the most amazing forward-thinking conversation, we'll just go back to International Women's Day and investing in women and making the world better for women, although we've had all of these things will, of course. So we've just had someone, who's asking about Australia's super strict data standards and data sharing standards, yes. And I think that's my point about why I think innovation is going to be tougher and slower in Australia, because there are a lot of things that are going to have to be changed or moved out of the way in order to be able to operate in this new way that Lisa and Mihaela have been talking about. I don't know if, Lisa, you want to add anything on the data standards?
Yeah, there's a few things there, and I think there's positive and negative in anything. And whilst it might be a little bit more challenging to get across, I think that we've got a huge trust in Australia because of those standards that we have. And so to be able to create something in Australia that's complying to those standards and then roll it out internationally is a huge opportunity. And so, part understanding what the real problems are, and then be able to use our skills, because we are highly educated, to be able to solve a problem, get it past all of those rules, and then apply it in different areas. And so definitely we do have strict data rules. I'd love to be able to, see someone create something that's got that trust and transparency in it to be able to roll it out internationally.
The big scandal with Facebook in Australia, which actually proved that you are, forward-looking there, because you stood your ground and Facebook had to accept. I don't know if you are aware of this, but
of course,
I read recently. Of course, you. Yeah. So that's right on, spot on. I mean, that says it all about your high standards, and the world should follow.
Well, maybe.
The mindset of the users as well has to come into that. And so, in Australia, when we rolled out the My Health and the data and everything like that, there was a lot of uproar, and you probably had 50% of the population who said, no, I don't want my data being captured, and we're still in this privacy. And if you look at different generations, the generations above us are all about privacy, and they grew up in a private world, and the generations below are just coming online, and they know that their data is being captured. And we're in the middle, and we're negotiating, and we're building these frameworks. And so when you go into some of those populations that have a younger average age, they're a lot more open to it than, being able to sort of pick and choose here in Australia. And if there's a benefit, then,
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that whole privacy debate is one that needs to be had in an informed way, because I think a lot of the privacy debates are, really misunderstanding what the current situation is to even think that you have privacy anymore. So anyway, just checking if there's any more questions from the audience. And if not, I'm just going to come back to kind of round off the panel and maybe think a little bit about blockchain and investing in women and how it can be used as a tool to be able to link, connect, incentivize and benefit women. But let me just see if there's anyone from the audience that have got a question they'd like someone from the panel to answer. Christina, I don't know who you are, but you've done a lot of applause and I love that. Thank you. So let's just go on and then ask that question. So Mihaela, and then you did talk about some crypto examples earlier, and you're obviously across so many of the projects. Is this something that those of us who are in the blockchain community should be really thinking about how to get behind some different projects, maybe some crypto investment funds or things that could be proactively channeled at building more female founders and getting capital into women-owned and led businesses?
Absolutely. And there are several women entrepreneurs who started crypto funds like Blockcelerate. Kate is, I think, known across the spectrum, and many more. So I think we have to encourage those. And of course, they stand as example. I am dreaming of a time when actually this will be the norm. I mean, when I grew up in Romania, there was normalcy about women in tech. I mean, there was not an issue that, should we actually stimulate women to go there? There were more in STEM than men. So I am dreaming of that time, and how can we achieve it actually? And I think it is through personal example. Being here, I think it's a good thing, and inviting everyone to contact us to get advice. Mentorship is very, very important for women entrepreneurs, and also, of course, support. And there are funds now which are dedicated to women entrepreneurs, but also, as Lisa was mentioning, with the universal basic income, I think it's very important to get a foundation for women to start with something, as I was mentioning in the examples before.
Yeah, thank you. And Lisa, I'll get you to comment, and then Mihaela, there's a couple of questions come in now, one specifically to you, and then another one that I think we can all probably bring together. So just Lisa, Your thoughts on this kind of blockchain connecting women, enabling women, investing in women?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is empowering people for impact. And that's what I love about this type of community and with the Qrypto Queens, of being connected to people who are doing stuff in this space. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, you're at the top of your tree, you're doing your own thing. And, you know, how do you get that support that you need? And then the second part is being a master asker and teaching people to ask. And Mihaela, you mentioned courage. And I think that's one of the things that we need to get more out there and create a safe space in these communities for people to ask. And so that's one of the things that I've been really driven by. And I am an investor, and I just want people to be able to come out and say, I want to do this, I need this much money or this support, or I need a connection into this kind of person, or whatever it may be. Being able to really identify and articulate what it is that's going to be able to help you get to the next stage. And we're in an economy now where there's a lot of investment going into female founders, and there's a lot of investment going into blockchain and different businesses like that, that it's really identifying. I like to talk about, identify who your ideal investor is, and then just ask to be connected with them. And whether it be LinkedIn or communities like this, it's just be really confident to ask. And like most people would be very happy to give them a leg up.
Brilliant. Well, we've got 3 great questions coming in. So one links back to that, Mihaela, so about the importance of encouraging women to speak even if they're scared. And then, Lisa, I might get you to talk about advice to starting out in blockchain. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to claim Karina's question for myself, but you're welcome to add examples as well. So let's just touch on this issue of courage. Mihaela.
I think it is, it is something which we learn from example, from others, at least, or you are born with it. I mean, you cannot force someone to have courage. It's clear. I remember I received, not this time, but I think it was a few years ago for International Women's Day, I received a quote in which it was appreciation for actually getting out there in the fight, even if you are scared, and just do it. It's as the famous Lean In book was saying, yes, just be there and make yourself heard. I have one example, very short, because I know we have more questions. So in board meetings where I only had men around the table, I'm sure many of you can relate. And I tried to say something several times. They were speaking over me. And then I stood up and then they saw me. So I could speak. So, use ways like this, or come to me and I will mentor you from my experience. It was not always bed of roses, but we also have to stand up for ourselves. So
I think so. And I think the reality is we all have fears. We've all overcome certain fears in order to be able to do what we've done. So, challenge those fears. Don't be afraid because you do feel fearful about something. It's a matter of how you can overcome it and how you can do what you really want to do. But you're absolutely not alone. And I guarantee you the most confident women that you'll ever meet anywhere in the world have also had fears of self-doubt, of failing, of looking stupid. But we just have to learn to overcome them for something that's important. So thank you so much. And then, Lisa, maybe, and one of those fears might be women who are starting out in blockchain and crypto, and others who say, well, you haven't been around, you're not in the community, you don't really know anything. What can people do about that?
I think when you're really passionate about what you're going to do and putting yourself out there, when you're really clear, it's having that courage. And then also, don't feel like you're alone. There are so many ways, and I think we just touched on then mentors and advisors. And when you're at the top of your tree and you're running a startup and everything, identify who could help you in that space. And it might be someone in the crypto space or blockchain that's got a lot of experience, that having them on your board of advisors or a non-executive director or something like that could actually add a lot of significance to your business. And so with the startup these days and the framework around being able to get advisors and mentors on, you might give away a really small fraction, a percentage of your company somewhere from like 0.25% or, up to 1% to be able to have advisors on board and then really be able to leverage their experience as well and the significance that can play into your startup. Just knowing and connecting. I think as an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and identifying that group of people around you that really have your back can be a great start.
Look, I think so. And when I first started getting involved in blockchain, I went to my first conference in January 2017, and I was just so nervous. I went to a hackathon and a conference, and I thought, everyone's going to think I'm ridiculous. They won't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what I'm talking about. There's all these kind of young people dressed like Indiana Jones and throwing coins up in the air and doing ICOs, and I'm just like wrong generation, and it's going to be terrible, and no one's talking about social impact. But it wasn't. I found the blockchain community to be one of the most inclusive, collaborative communities I've ever been part of. So I think part of it is just, step out there and meet people and listen, learn, and when you've got something to share. But I just want to
proud of women like you did, when you
exactly
went there, yes, to join.
So if you want to continue after this, you're very welcome to, but I've got to jump off this and jump on to the Indonesia session, which I invite you all to come and join as well, because it's going to be great. But I did want to, Karina, just touch on your question, which is a lot of the discussion about blockchain's been about financial services and so forth. But I just wanted to say, healthcare has been the blockchain poster child during the pandemic, which probably isn't what we expected. So in everything from, the PPE equipment in the beginning, the track and trace, the genuine PPE equipment and the whole supply chain for that, remote care, looking after people and being able to manage and use their data without being near them, the use of blockchain for contact tracing, the use of blockchain for secure data exchange. And you remember those maps of the world with the blood red circles that kept on sort of getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That was underpinned by a blockchain secure data sharing platform. And then obviously, payments is important, whether it's getting payments to people, in a welfare situation, or whether it's payments in a supply chain, or whether it's insurance payments. So obviously those things are tremendously important. So that's only one example, but there are so many other sectors where blockchain, other than financial services, is really proving its value, and we're only going to see more. So I would just lovely to see you too, Karina, and I'm in Brisbane. Anyone who's in Brisbane, let's get together. So I haven't been able to say that for years. But just really, what a great discussion, and it's one that I hope we can continue over years. And we can see that promise, that promise of technology, investing in women, empowering women, giving voice and hope to women. And I think this has just been such a joyous experience on International Women's Day, to be talking to you and then moving on and talking to other people all around the world. And we all have the same heart about this, and we're one community, and we should support each other and lift each other up and make it a better world. So thank you so much for those of you who joined us, and thank you to Lisa and Mihaela for helping moderate the panel. And happy International Brisbane Day. I was looking at these comments about Brisbane. Happy International Women's Day, and hi there to all of our community in Brisbane. So thank you, everyone. Join us in Indonesia if you feel like it. That's where I'm going. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.